We will reconvene the recessed meeting of the Budget Committee. And before we hear from our county counsel, Gary Schmidt has a couple of comments to make to us. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, we have typed up for you the list of priorities you identified yesterday during our first day. It's right in front of you on your papers. I handed that out to you just so you can have that now as you continue your discussions to help keep these in the back of your mind. This will be in addition to the priority list that was in your packet and, of course, the strategic plan of the county that you already created. So thanks to Laurel and team for putting this together so quickly.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We appreciate staff's attention to that. So, good afternoon, Mr. Madker. How are you today?
I am excellent, Chair Parks. Good afternoon to you and the rest of the Budget Committee.
Thank you. And you may proceed at any time. I do want to let you know that we have about 45 minutes scheduled for your
I
presentation.
think it's a half hour.
And you get half of that, and we get half of that.
Can we get that screen on the bottom there?
Yeah, I've got a note that it's about 45 minutes.
Gary, is it half hour or 45?
Actually, you're scheduled for 45 minutes,
Okay.
but take as little
Well, I had it
time
at
as you
15
need.
minutes, so I can take more time then, absolutely.
Efficiency is appreciated. Efficiency.
We bill at a reasonable rate.
One more time, good afternoon. I'm Stephen Madcore. I'm your county counsel. And we have a shop across the way on the second floor, which has 12.75 FTEs. 10 of those are lawyers. The other 2.75 are our support staff, 2 paralegals, and 1 office assistant, basically the office manager. I want to confirm that you've been provided with a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Is that correct?
We have. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Well, that's good. So, as your lawyers, what do we do and what should the county expect? What we do is provide comprehensive, competent, timely, and easily acceptable legal services, advice, representation, guidance, counsel to department heads, to the Board of County Commissioners, to other electeds, to the special districts, and even to hamlets and villages and sometimes CPOs, depending upon the capacity in which they act. It is to make sure that the risks are minimized and identified and that the county gets the best legal defense and advice possible. That is our internal objective. And how do we do this? We do this by providing 3 different bodies of service to business levels to the county departments. We have 3 groups. We have the transactional group, which is advisory and transactional, reviewing contracts and providing advice, everything from the Housing Authority to H3S to Department of Transportation and Development to IGAs. We have a litigation and employment group, which defends the county in lawsuits, occasionally brings lawsuits on behalf of the county, provides advice on labor negotiations and employment disputes. We have approximately 2,000 employees. Inevitable that we'll get some disputes. That's that line of business. We also do general governmental advice. That is public meetings, public records, training, advice to elected officials, advice to department heads, and areas along those lines. One of the questions yesterday, I believe it was from a Budget Committee member, Lee, was the status of the forced trust litigation. The county oftentimes will engage with outside counsel, rare occasion, but with certain situations we do. That is one of the cases. We are a plaintiff in a class action case right now brought initially by Lynn County against the state Department of Forestry for revenues that the counties claim they were denied as a result of reduced timber harvest in particular properties within various counties. There's a number of counties involved with it. The status of that case is it is going to a mediation with former Judge Karsten Rasmussen and Lane Shutterly, who is formerly from LCDC. They are going to be the mediators. We will have a seat at that table. That is going to be coming up within the course of the next 2 months. So that's directly responsive to the question that committee member Lee had. We also are involved in a multi-state federal litigation on the opioids epidemic, and that is taking place in the Southern District of Ohio right now. The county is engaged with an outside law firm for that, teamed up with with Washington County and Lane County on that one. Multnomah has a separate case that's on track. Those have all been consolidated at the federal court level. Slow progress on that one, but we are involved in that. The majority of all legal work within the county, for the county, is done in-house with our 10 lawyers. We occasionally farm out for bond work, which is higher risk, higher exposure, more specialized. Bankruptcy, of which we have very limited involvement with. Occasionally, the housing authority will need some expertise. We farm that out. Or if there's a conflict with a particular case, internally, externally, we will hire outside counsel for that as well. Those are few and far between, and when we do, we always try to get the best government rate available for that particular line of work. We always approve it, it gets board approval, and we monitor and track the billings and progress on those particular cases. The county administrator, Mr. Schmidt, of which we've worked a long time with in the past. While he was at PGA, we enjoy his new position. We work very closely with him in his office. He asked us to reduce our ask to the county. Our ask is basically people, papers, and pencil. So if we were to reduce it, it would be people, papers, or pencil. And so what we did do, we cut $1,000 from materials and services initially. Alternatively, we have a very lean, well-run, tightly organized and supervised machine. We do not have extensive travel costs. We have minimal training costs. We have minimal CLE, which is continuing legal education costs. We try to do as much in-house or in bulk as possible. We don't send people to Vegas. We don't send people to Cancun or Williamsburg or Orlando. The best we get is Bend or Eugene. So I assure you that we are very good stewards of the taxpayer dollars when we're going for that particular level of training. We have had, I don't want to say some challenges, but we've evolved when it comes to performance clackamous. When we initially did the plan, there were some benchmarks and some levels of service that were hard to track, hard to achieve, might have been a little bit too optimistic perhaps, too difficult to track, too aspirational. So over the course of being involved in the performance clackamous, we've identified areas that we can more closely track and align ourselves with without a significant devotion of staff time or software or new programming to track that particular information. So we have had some modifications to things. Some of the things that we haven't easily track is contract review turnaround time. How many do we get? How often does it take to turn them around in terms of approving them back to the department? Our level of response is in the 80+ range, and I anticipate it is only going to get better as time progresses. We also have incorporated into it the number of performance evaluations that we do. We are at 100% right now for performance evaluations internally. There was a year apparently where I missed a couple, so 85 was our lowest one. We also have new benchmarks for training. What type of internal training do we do? What how do we track that? We did 11 trainings last year: public records, public meetings, ethics. We train to board conduct and rules of engagement for CPOs, hamlets, and villages. We'll go out to their particular location and provide trainings there to make sure that they are abiding by public records, public meetings, ethics, and things along those lines. So those are also the types of services that the office provides that we can track on a regular basis for satisfying the performance clackamous component of things. As I stated in this particular slide, our work hasn't changed. Our work stays the same. We sue, we get sued, we provide advice. We do what the office has always done. We do it better, stronger, and faster now, more cost effectively, but we try to track things now as well. That has been one of the difficult components of it's difficult to devote a lot of human resources to continually tracking it, so we try to make it as easily tracked and as digitized as is possible in that regard. what do we see as issues that are presenting on the forefront? We see an increase in employment-related claims, ADA claims. Employment litigation is kind of like the cause célèbre now on a variety of fronts, whether it's sexual harassment or discrimination, very time-consuming, divisive, disruptive, expensive cases. We have an increase in those. Cause, it's just a societal thing, and those are the risk of when you employ 2,000 people. We also are going to have and have had an increase in construction-related litigation. We've had Carver Bridge litigation, Pudding River litigation, Bell Avenue litigation. We're planning on building a courthouse. That is going to be involved. There's going to be contract issues. There's going to be eventually cost overrun issues. So what does that mean for the office? What does that mean for the office? We likely will have to have a full-time construction defect litigation attorney associated with that. Currently, we contract out with Multnomah County, who does have an in-house one. We contract out with them at the tune of $90 an hour. We get excellent value for that. We've done the same with Multnomah County with the HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accommodation Act. We get one of their lawyers who is a statewide expert in it, and instead of going out and paying $30,000 to get that, we have her work closely with us, come up with policies and practices for clackamas that are applicable across the board, which are great value because HIPAA violations can be very, very costly for public entities. So we've used our relationship with some of our sister counties with procuring those types of services. So there will come a time, though, where those counties don't have the bandwidth to aid us because our demand is going to be so high. What else will we need coming up? We will need additional support staff. I anticipate that we had 2.75s. We bumped one up to 1 FTE because of the demand of the workload. Litigation primarily required that person to be in the office from 7 to 6, 4 days a week. One thing we do have, and this group has seen it, this group has commented on it, is there is a flat line for revenues. Our revenues are derived from billing the risk fund or other cash receiving entities, WES, DTD, primarily, and risk, if there's a case, if there's a lawsuit, majority of them go to the risk fund. That is coming out of the jail, coming out of the sheriff's office. If it is a tort, an offense against person or property, we bill it to the risk fund. Not all cases qualify for that. Damascus, for example, is not a risk fund case. But that said, we've been billing at 124 hours since I've been here, which has been 9 years. That's why the revenue is flat. That's why the delta is getting greater. That's why you see a divergence when you look at the graph. Our budget now this year, 1920, that we're requesting is about 2.9 million. And it is going to get higher because our costs, like all costs around the county, go up through no fault of our own. PERS costs, employment costs, merit increases, COLA increases, allocated costs, things along those lines. We've never really explored who has the authority and decision-making authority to increase our hourly rate. I would submit that it is this body that is where the conversation should start. And I do recommend that we evaluate whether to increase our hourly rate above the 124 and 66 for paralegals to a number that is more commensurate with the private sector or even public sector markets as well. So that is something that I put down as an emerging issue, which is probably 6 years delayed in the making. So that's certainly something that I would be happy to entertain further with this group and chat with them about that. As a general rule, though, like I said, we have 3 different lines of business: transactional, litigation, and general county. The majority of the resources are in litigation because that's where our risk and that's where our liability and that's where the majority of our activity actually lies. Majority of litigation is coming out of the sheriff's office, as it historically has, as it would with any almost public entity. I think the majority is going to be with public health and safety is where you're going to get your litigation, so we're not an anomaly there. That said, though, again, we provide, I call it boutique law firm service at a Walmart price. And that's what we tried to deliver over the course of years, and that's what we continue to deliver. And I ask for your support in moving our budget forward, and I am here to answer any questions you have. But before that, I also want to introduce another way that we capitalize on our contacts in the community is we have a volunteer second-year law student, Emily Peterson, right here from University of Oregon, who will volunteer how many hours a week, Emily? 40 hours a week, she'll volunteer. And so
Yeah.
one of the things
Wait a
I
minute, is
wanted
that what
to see,
attorneys
I wanted to
do?
bring her to introduce you to her. We try to do that on a regular basis. We don't have budget to pay for clerks or volunteer or for law interns, but we do have volunteers, and we have had for a number of years. And so she's a welcome addition, and that's another effort that we use to maximize our efficiencies. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
We'll start with Commissioner Bernard,
I
sir.
have a brain freeze right now. So if we raise the rates, it just goes to overhead costs, which everyone has to pay for, right?
Well, you're not, the county council is not an allocated cost department. So it's those departments that charge for services, not all do, some do. So it'd be what they would be reimbursing back to county council.
So I'd say we should put that on the parking lot as potential rate increase for county council.
Yeah, that was pretty surprising to hear that. It's been that way for 12 years.
At least for 9, I don't know
9.
the actual date that 124 was established, but it's been there for a while.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Savas?
So do you have a rough number of what other public entities charge on a per hour basis?
A lot of entities don't really internally charge. They would be just regarded as an essential internal service. We haven't necessarily explored like the Port of Portland, how they might divvy it up. DOJ does charge, and I could find what hours, what rates they have, and offhand I do not know, but the Department of Justice, AG's office, they do charge departments down there in certain areas of their lines of business as well.
I wonder too if it might be pertinent to know what some other firms charge when a private firm that does work for like cities and other counties. You know, I know that from my recollection of when we used to do that in the city of Milwaukee, it was considerably higher than $124 an hour.
You are correct, it would be, that would require a questionnaire. It's a minimum, I'm quite sure, of 195, probably averaging 250. Sometimes government work is bulk work, it's like insurance company work, but those numbers add up very, very quickly.
Yeah, so that could be a comparison.
So the source of your revenue derived off of your $124 an hour rate are relatively primarily all internal to the county. Is that
Correct.
Correct?
It's going to be some of our special districts, and it will be the risk fund.
So it really doesn't really generate any outside income, but it would certainly augment your income. I mean, it'd be an exercise, but in reality, it wouldn't be that much dissimilar to us just simply
Right.
paying or giving you a greater general fund basis than it would be. I'm trying to understand the value unless we could bill out for it in the event that, attorneys' costs are retrieved. I'm just trying to, how you associate it, what basis you would either get to market rate versus public market rate versus what public entities charge internally.
Or districts.
Districts.
Additionally.
We can't provide services to members of the public. Our client is the public entity itself. What it would do is reduce the office's reliance on the general fund. Currently, that reliance has gone up every year. 2 years ago, 2.6, now it's 2.95. Income 951, 941, 965. So our income source has remained relatively static. Our cost source, which means more reliance on the general fund, has increased, and that's what it would do. I'm not saying that it provides incentive to Wes or to the risk fund or anybody else to procure our services, but it does reduce the reliance on the risk fund.
Those nine something numbers you rolled out were what?
They are on the page 3 of the slides. I can put it right up here, Commissioner Savas. It was 951, 941, 2, and 965. And those are basically revenues that we bill out at.
Okay. I didn't, my page 3 doesn't have that, so,
Of the slide, though.
The green bars.
It's because
page 2.
we've got two a
Okay.
page.
Page 2, okay. So what are your hours? I mean, the hours that would be subject to the rate change? That you, on an annual basis, or whatever number you're familiar with, I mean, what are the billable hours under that scenario?
Those numbers are included in the annual report of County Council, which is right here. It's available online on the intranet and intranet, but I would have to explore it a bit closer. For example, though, your year is 2080 minus about 80 hours, 90 hours. So about 2,000, 1,900 hours is what you'd expect from an FTE. Amanda Keller, who provides work to Wes, Water Environment Services, she exclusively bills to them. So that would be 1,900 hours plus or minus billed to Wes. Our litigation group bills more hours than that to the risk fund itself, and
So are all hours billable?
no,
Okay.
this hour right here is not billable. I can't make it so, if you'd like.
That was good.
We have a lot of hours that are not billable.
Your budget.
Yeah, we have,
Get out of
yes.
here right away.
Yeah. So, offhand, Commissioner Savas, I don't have the number, but we do track it. For the litigation, we track that because that's billed and that's paid. We have other matters, Damascus, for example, Gladstone Library, some of the Happy Valley stuff. We'll bill on the Happy Valley, but if I'm advising the board on the status of things, we don't bill that. We track our time, but it's not billed to the Parks District. It would be too expensive.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Commissioner Humberston and then Ms. Lee.
So when you're involved in when your office is involved in a lawsuit
I am
and
so
you
sorry.
and you prevail in the lawsuit and you get attorney's fees, do you still bill at that $124 an hour, or do you bill at a different rate?
We would charge for more than the 128. It would be market rate because that's what the law allows for. But I will say the courts are very reluctant to ever award public entities their attorney's fees for defending a lawsuit. There's a basis for it, but it really has to be an outright frivolous lawsuit. Or if there was a contract and the contract said the prevailing party gets attorney's fees and we were to prevail, then we would have an entitlement to attorney's fees. Courts are very, they like to scrutinize those hours. So we seldom pursue attorney fee recovery because it's seldom available.
So when you're billing internally at I think you said $124 an hour. If you bill Wes, do you consider that internal or external? And with that question, since that's generally a general fund supported operation, could you bill them at a different rate than you bill internally?
You could. It's up to you, but yes, you certainly could.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Our county administrator, Mr. Schmidt, has a comment to add to the conversation.
Yes.
Thank you.
There also could be a discussion, should county council be an allocated cost department? In the past, that has been a conversation, and we haven't gone down that path, but that's something else to consider. I would respectfully request that this could be something that the staff could discuss as part of the preparation for the 2020 fiscal year budget as we look at entirely how we rebuild the budget. So of course, if you choose, you could discuss it now, but I'd rather propose let me and Stephen and the team work as we prepare the 2020 fiscal year budget to look at his billing rates. That would be certainly an appropriate conversation as we rebuild the budget.
Can you put a side note, 2020 question mark?
Well, I
up there?
thought that's what the parking lot was.
Well, yes and no. It's, some of those I think folks would want talked about as we deliberate the first part of next week. So,
Actually, Laurel's list talks about budget policies, and we have talked about a cost recovery policy, which I think this would be part of, and it would probably call for like an annual update of rates rather than you going 9
yeah,
years without.
so we wouldn't wait
updated
another
rates.
9 years.
Yeah, exactly, and it would be done somewhat uniformly throughout the county.
Yeah.
That was my
Okay,
comment.
Ms. Lee?
And
Yes, actually, I had the same question as Commissioner Humbertson, but then as you addressed his question, I had another one. You mentioned municipalities don't often recover defendant fees, but like in the case of the opioid case where you're a plaintiff, would you be able to recover then at a higher rate?
No, what we're looking at with that one is a contingency. It would be 1/3 would be to the lawyers, and they are taking this case on a contingency, so it's not costing the counties anything out of pocket, win, lose, or draw. But the amount received by any of the public entities would be through an assessment of damages, compensatory and/or punitive damages, and we would get a proportionate share of those depending upon our population and/or prescriptions of opioids administered.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Feely, you had your card up a moment ago. Did you have another comment to make? That was it? Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else with any comments at the moment?
Our parking lot fees are really low.
Yeah. Like so low. Thank you, Mr. Madker, thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you.
Appreciate your time today. Let me ask a technical question. Are we having issues that can't be resolved with our,
Yeah, at break
projector?
time, tech service will come at the break time.
okay,
2:45.
at break time? Okay, because I was going to say we had a few minutes right now if they were handy, but that's fine. Okay. Our next presentation is not scheduled to begin for another 15 minutes, and I'm not sure if, I know some of the participants are in the room, but I'm not sure that all of the, participants are in the room that we would want. So let's take a quick impromptu break, maybe 10 minutes, or as soon as all the rest of the folks get in the room.